This thing, I fight it. Can you hear me? Okay, all right, good. Okay, so we're continuing on in our study of some of the parables. Today I have chosen the parable of the wise and foolish builder. Our text will be Matthew chapter 7, and we're actually going to start our text a little bit before the parable in verse 21, and it'll be through 27. Just to kind of set the scene again here for you, this is kind of the end of the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus is preaching. And to me, this parable, and I was thinking about having somebody get up here and lead us in the song that the kids sing, but I thought better of it. I don't think anybody come up here. I'm kidding, by the way. I did think about asking Bubba to do that for real, but I knew he would do it. So. But anyway, to me, this parable, I guess you can look at it from a lot of different angles, and I try to find an angle that maybe hasn't been just discussed over and over again in these classes, because we all are so familiar with these parables. But I feel like that this parable, to me, is more about choices and decisions that each of us as an individual has to make in our life, and then also the consequences that come with that. Okay. And there's kind of four major topics or characters at play here in this parable. Obviously, the first one is when Jesus talks about the foundation, the rock, the sand. And that foundation for our purposes, and I think what Jesus was trying to get us, the point across to us is that is what we base our lives on, what we build our lives on, our spiritual lives on. It could also kind of be looked at, maybe it's our compass that we follow in life. And maybe even you could say it's what we choose as an individual to do with God's Word and God's will. So that kind of lays the definition of the foundation for our study here. And then, of course, you got the house, which that's our souls, that's our lives. And you have the wise builder and the foolish builder. So, I feel like, just before we jump into this, that everybody, individually, we all have to decide what we're going to do with God's Word. Once you hear it, once you hear the Word, it's up to you if you're going to decide to build your house on the rock and follow His will, or if you're going to choose to follow the will of the world or of man and build your house on the sand. So, with that being said, I want to read one. This does not have to do necessarily anything with the parable, but I think it's fitting to get us into the parable. Matthew 16 verses 26 reads, "For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul?" So I think that's kind of the premise I want to build this lesson on as we jump in here. And I'm going to ask someone if you'd like to go ahead and open up Matthew 7 verses 21 through 27 and read that for us, please. Anybody?
I'll get it.
Okay. This is the parable.
You want me to start at 21?
Yes, sir. We're going to be a little ahead of it.
All right, no problem. "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, 'Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.' Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall."
Okay, thank you, Scott. So there's our parable, and basically I want to I cover about 5 big topics that I kind of bring out of that parable. And man, this class got bigger all of a sudden. Okay, so first of all, kind of a statement, and please, all 5 of these I'm trying to leave open for discussion. So I'm going to kind of build off of what y'all have to say about these things. So please chime in, raise your hand, and if we get to the end of my notes, great. If not, that's fine too. But first of all, I think it's interesting to note that the builders are not compared and contrasted as to what they built, rather with respect to the foundation they built upon. Okay, I'm going to say it again. The builders are not compared and contrasted as to what they built, rather with respect to the foundation that they built upon. So to me, the wise man's success here was not because his house was built better or bigger or more elaborate. It was because it was the foundation that he built it on, the rock. And we know that that is the will of God. Doesn't say the foolish man built a shack. Okay, he may have built just as nice of a house as the wise man. It all comes down to what he built it on, and we know that he built it on the sand. Okay, and that is the will of the world. That is that is the word of man. Okay, he didn't follow Jesus. So basically, to me, we have 2 options. Okay, when it comes to our souls and when we're building our spiritual relationship with God, we can build it on according to His will on the rock, or we can follow the will of the world or of man. So with that, I'm going to open that up. Any comments about that? What do you think?
I'll just say any building without a good foundation is not going to stand.
That's right.
And now, even more than ever, in the Mobile County and Mobile City, they're more concerned about wind loads and all that. They want more studies done on foundations in any part of the building, it seems like.
Yeah.
And they're twice as big as they used to be.
Yeah, that's true. Taller, big.
Makes a point that you got to have a foundation.
Yep. I agree with it. Anybody else? Anything to say? So I mean, I feel like that, so we can take, I always find myself trying to bounce back and forth in these parables because of what Jesus is trying to teach us, that He teaches us through parables. If you're thinking literally, yes, you got to build a house on a good foundation. But as far as our spiritual lives, I think that, especially in my life, I was raised in the church, and I spent a part of my life outside of the church. And I have talked to Terry. I've told Terry this before. I mean, and I've talked to my dad about this before, because there's no doubt in my mind, had I not had that foundation when I was a kid, and when I tell you, we were at church, if the lights were on in the church, we were turning the lights on. Okay, we were there, and he built that for us. And without that, I think I would be still wandering around in the world. So yes, sir.
I second that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I grew up in the church, and went to a Christian school, but then when I got in the Navy, and of course I'm thinking, I'm going to do good, but I was surrounded by worldly people, and it wasn't wrong. I was doing right there with them.
That's right.
But my mother would always say that, we taught you right. This is a spree you're going through. And then later on in life, when I really started getting into the Bible, it basically says the same thing. To raise up your child as you should, he'll never leave. Right. And so you're speaking truth. The problem is that unfortunately, not everybody that we come into contact has been raised in the church, so they have they only know one way. And,
right.
And that's where we need Jesus to help us help them. Because I heard one time, I was in class, and a lady was saying that if you've been in the dark all your life, of course she was talking about worldly things, to see the light, you might see it, but you're like, you don't want to go there because you don't know about that.
Right.
And so yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. Anybody else? Okay.
What Scott said about dark and light, that's how Jesus started out this sermon.
Mm-hmm.
You got a choice to make. You're going to be salt, or you're going to be light, or you're going to be darkness. And he concludes it with, you're going to build on the foundation, or you're not.
Right.
And I think I know that's simplistic, but I'm thankful because, Christ, He didn't try to confuse us. He laid it out there for us. It is all about the choice we make. How are we going to build our family's foundation? How are we going to build our marriage foundation? How are we going to build our work foundation? All that's laid out for us in the Bible, but it comes down to being the light in this dark world.
Yes. You know, and back to myself, I mean, you know, look, my dad laid the foundation, okay? And he didn't ever try to make me be a Christian. He never tried to make my own faith. But he did lay that foundation. And I, you know, without that, if I hadn't had that, man, I would just, you know, I'd been, my house would have definitely been built on the sand, probably the mud, the quicksand, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, it's so important to have that foundation. And thank you all for saying it, because you just backed up what I'm saying there. Okay, if nobody else has got anything on that one, the second thing I would like to say is that intelligent people can make foolish decisions. And I told Ashley, I'm a big radio classics. I don't know if anybody listens to XM radio or Sirius radio, but radio classics, I've always told people I think I was born 100 years too late, because I love the old 1930s and 40s radio shows. I listen to every one. You name them, I bet you I've listened to it. But I was just happening to be listening to one yesterday coming home from our hunting camp, and one of the guys just, I don't know why I caught this line, but in regards to intelligent people can make foolish decisions, the line in this little show on the radio was, everyone has a theory, fools to philosophers. So everybody has a theory about how things should be, but certainly some are right and some are wrong. So in other words, the parable doesn't allow us to know if one builder was smarter than the other one. In this scenario, so let's say both these guys are average intelligence, good guys, hard-working guys. But in this scenario, one guy makes an intelligent, a wise decision, whereas the other person makes a foolish decision. I have an example of this, and I've talked to Ashley about this. You know, I work in the hospital, and I work around a bunch of doctors, and say what you want to about doctors, but you know, they think they are the smartest people in the world, okay? And they are smart. They wouldn't be where they are if they weren't smart, but they have all the answers, okay? And so I'm sitting in the doctor's lounge one day, just with one of our surgeons, and we're eating lunch, and they're having a discussion about a COVID vaccine and whatnot, and somehow the topic of evolution comes up, okay? And I'm still trying to I'm just trying to eat faster now, and so they, you know, something just came up. I said, well, I don't believe in evolution. Well, one of the doctors said, what, you don't believe in evolution? Have you ever seen an embryo? Doesn't it look like what did he say, a baby tadpole or something like that? I'm like, yeah, but you didn't grow up to be a frog, you know, or anything like that. So, but then there was another doctor there who was one of the bigger wig doctors. He basically said, you religious people, faith and religion, faith and religion. So, I mean, to me, I'm sitting in a room full of a lot of smart people who make really foolish decisions when it comes to their souls. Okay?
And that's not just in medical